I'm Joe Hyde, and this is a microphone. I'm Joe Hyde. I'm a publisher of San Angelo Live in Texas, and Howard.
And I'm Howard Owens, publisher of the Batavian in Batavia, New York.
Which is in western New York if you're from Texas. It's not by the city.
Nowhere near the city. New York City!
Anyway, we're supposed to talk about hard times.
Well, so I was thinking, well, what am I going to talk about in hard times? I think anybody that takes this on, depending on, I imagine very few of, if any of us went into this already independently wealthy. So there's probably always a sense of there's not much between you and the deep blue sea if things go south. So I guess a couple of anecdotes to start. So early on, when we first started, and I mentioned this the other day, we had 3 months to get up to $4,000 a month in revenue, just so we could kind of like keep feeding ourselves. And so that was the first kind of hurdle to get through and just work through and concentrate on hitting those numbers. And I would say for the first year or two at least, I would have a period every month where I'd be like, especially like I'd be sitting working on my bills, on my invoices that I'm going to be delivering to advertisers, sitting thinking, you know, I'm going to go and walk in and somebody's going to cancel their ad, or, you know, why am I doing this? This is so hard. Just constantly worry, am I really going to still be in business for now? I'd get in these real funks usually near the end of the month. And then I'd print out all my invoices and I'd go out and deliver, and just talking with the advertisers, nobody ever canceled. Everybody's like, you're doing a great job. So that just always provided a lot of motivation. So that's just kind of like the ongoing kind of startup angst that maybe, you know, we can talk about. And then the other thing is there have been disasters along the way. We started out with, I see now that Charlotte's joined us, so I already started launched in, but we'll get her introduced in a second. But probably the darkest, most horrifying moment in the history of the Batavian was 4 years into it, maybe. And we'd started out with our ad server being DFP, switched to OpenX, and you know, it was working fine for us. And one day I started getting all these calls and emails that people were getting malware on their computers. And I had a couple of computer shops calling me up, you know, your readers are getting malware. And I had no idea this was going on. One of the largest businesses in the county. And now the he's become a pretty good friend, but I didn't know him at the time. His accountant was sitting at the computer, and she happened to look up at the computer screen, and there were 6 transactions lined up to transfer money out of their bank account, just pending. That was $500,000 in revenue about to transfer out of their bank account.
Because of you.
Well, because they had malware on the computer, and so there's a very good chance they got the malware from us.
And they
can't prove it.
And that came through
OpenX. We are using OpenX as an ad server, and I was just like, you know, everybody in the community knew our site had gotten hacked. I mean, it spread just so quickly. It was horrible. I had to take the ads down for 3 days, and the only reason we're still in business is Kenny from Broad Street. He switched us over in 3 days to his ad server, and we haven't been hacked since. So, and it's super fast. So when you hear me saying Broad Street's the greatest vendor in the world, that's the root of the story right there. He literally saved our business. So
we have someone new at the panel, and she's from Texas too.
I'm Charlotte Ann Lucas. I run Nowcast SA. We like to refer to it as public television on the internet.
And the SA stands for San Antonio.
As opposed to San Angelo, nearby, same state. We we are a nonprofit, and we were started by a fabulous grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation in 2009. That was from the Community Information Challenge through the Knight Grant. And it was $400,000 that let me do a lot of innovating in the very beginning, but it also let me spend way too much time not thinking about where the next funds were going to come from. Which I think that you heard in his talk this morning, that they realized that they weren't really thinking about helping us go, oh yes, what after this? What comes after this? And so there was not, and Knight, John Bracken has said to me before, well, that we were never meant to be a sustaining thing. That was just like a one-time thing. So, we're after that, then where do the funds come from? And one of the things that we did was, while I wasn't paying any attention to a business plan in the very beginning, but we did a lot of live streaming, and after a while people said, well, how much would it cost for us to have one of those live stream things? And so we had to figure out, costing it out, and figure out what the basis of it was, and how much, not just how much it cost, but how much it cost so that we would live to roll the next day. And so initially we costed it at like $1,500, and then we went up to $1,800, and now anything up to 4 hours is $3,200 for folks that can afford it, so that we can also occasionally do things for people who can't afford anything like that. And last year, our underwriting business was up to $149,000.
So you were making $150,000 in live streaming services, professional services.
Right,
Gotcha.
right, yeah.
So,
But,
yeah.
well,
That's very good.
donations and grants are down to here. And our costs, we're taking nonprofit way too seriously.
Ain't no more money left in Texas.
But we're taking the nonprofit thing way too seriously. I mean, that was a negative. I mean, we're definitely at a negative for the year. I mean, our costs, including things like property insurance for $35,000 worth of equipment that travels all over the state, media liability, directors and officers insurance. I mean, it's stuff that we can't not have. Those kinds of basic costs. Hosting is a big cost, or was a bigger cost than it is now. But there are a lot of underlying costs besides the salaries of 2.5 people. And the hard times is that, like today, I have $25,000 in receivables, and some of that is 90 days behind. And that's a tough way to make payroll.
Well, I am always worried about going broke, because you really are living on the edge when you're doing this. But there are some things that can help you. For example, I use QuickBooks Online, and it has a recurring billing feature in it. I have not seen anything else. I've tried a lot of other accounting systems. I've not seen anything that's as good as QuickBooks Online, as far as the accessibility of them being able to pay by credit card, the ability to bill things online are recurring, and also it gives you a really good picture, and you can just hit one button. When someone starts running behind, hit one button, it'll send them a statement. And it kind of forces me to go through 3 pages worth of accounts and see who's not paying me. So that helps out a lot. I do. The accountant I have has a login to QuickBooks Online, and they do all the payroll and the Texas sales tax and the Texas workforce unemployment insurance, all that stuff. No, it's all done with, my wife does the invoicing, but most of it's done with monthly recurring. It's already set up as a recurring template. And that is the key. If you're selling, figure out your model, but I want someone on for 12 months that's going to be monthly recurring, as opposed to someone that I have to resell to every month. Because that can become maddening, and that's all you're doing is just chasing that stuff. You got to have a lay down a bed of people that are paying you monthly. I learned that from the first business because, like you, I mean, I had to, back in '08, before the financial crisis, I had San Joe Live was actually a magazine that was printed, and it cost $16,000 to print because we sent it out to 42,000 households. And so that was a huge $16,000 print bill and mailing bill was, huge liability that I had to cover. And I woke up one day in March of 2008, and I noticed that I had $105,000 in receivables. I spent 2 weeks sitting in people's offices waiting for them to write me a check, being obnoxious. I'm pretty good at that, but it still stinks to have to do that. But
it does. It does. I mean, playing Mr. Repo Man is like the least of, I hate it.
Yeah.
And yet, it's so.
So what are the techniques for doing it? Because, of course, I do this all the time. I'm dealing with bars. We're dealing with some people that you think they're going to pay, but they don't pay. So
Yeah.
What's the best way to deal with it?
I would say, can I answer? I would say on a bar, people who are not going to pay, which they're happy and they slap you on the back and they say, well, if they don't have an experience, you don't have any experience with them being on time paying like 2 or 3 times in a row, I would just, put them on a weekly or monthly kind of thing where you have to go by and pick up the check and always realize that the last check you're not going to get. So make sure you collect a check, one check in advance.
I've got a lot of clients like that I know I'm going to pay.
But it's,
Pay in advance.
yeah. You could say pay in advance. I would say take the first one up in advance, and then on the monthly recurring, you're going to have to go by and see them and collect another check. And don't let them get too far behind. Where I get killed, and this is what QuickBooks Online will do, is, I got one client who's $3,000 out. They'll never pay. They just say, screw it. Yeah, and they'll come back and say, well, you didn't do anything for me. That kind of crap. So I have one of the...
I make the lowest priority for the payment.
Yeah, of course you are.
Pay their other bills first, and I think you're liable.
Well, I look at it, I triage my own bills, and I think the reason bills go unpaid is that's how everybody operates, and it's a waterfall effect. And I'm not, they're going to pay payroll first before they pay me.
And you're going to pay the taxes.
And they're going to pay their taxes. And so, I am low man on the totem pole. I kind of accept that. We go about, we average, say, about 30%, 30 days or more past due. Yeah. So basically I just have to budget accordingly, knowing, and then every once in a while it'll be a lot of fun. Everybody will decide for whatever reason the stars align and a whole bunch of people will pay their past due at the same time. And now I'm sitting on a pile of cash. So that becomes kind of fun.
Charge a late fee, which I started doing.
I've never wanted to do that. A, they can just ignore it, and B, it just creates. I worry about creating a hostile relationship. I try to keep everything as friendly as possible.
We do offer like a discount if you pay in advance. Try to give that incentive. So for some places, institutions particularly, they get points.
But I haven't wanted to go that route because then some other advertiser might find out, oh, you're rewarding the people that were paying you late, and I always paid you on time.
Credit cards on.
Well, I'm getting around to that. So more and more we're trying to convert people to credit cards, and I'm going to start employing some new strategies to get people to that. One is I'm going to offer. When we do our next rate increase, I'm going to also say, and if you let us put you on credit card, we'll give you a free sponsored post. And a free sponsored post. Just to
pay my freelancers via PayPal because it's just easy.
yeah. So.
Pay me for PayPal, I'm willing to give them a discount. Somehow I like it because me makes a lot of
Okay. So the probably there have been way less than 10% of every advertiser I've ever dealt with has in the long run stiffed me. At some point, I just delete the invoice. They're not advertising with me anymore. I delete it, and
they're dead.
And they're dead to me. And no, but none of them have ever asked to come back. Of course, usually what happens is sometime after that they go out of business. That's the kind of shape that they're in. But I have a long memory, and I also have everybody on file. So I can pull, even though I've deleted it out of QuickBooks, I can still pull the paper invoice out and say, you still owe me this. I have one woman who has gone out of business, and she just, 3 months after going out of business, she just paid everything she owed me. So that was kind of nice. And then there was a gentleman who fell 8 months behind. And finally, he used to like fall behind and then catch up, fall behind and catch up. So I kind of that's why I let him slide so long. And then it got to like 8 months, and I'm like, I got to take down your ad. He's like, I understand. But a month later, I got a check. A month later, or a couple months later, I got another check. It took him a year, but he paid it off. And so when he paid it off, I sent him a note and said, he'd been paying $230 a month. I said, I'll give you the same ad for $200 a month if you give me a credit card. And he's been on recurring payment with credit card for 3 years now. So just employing that kind of strategy, you know. And the last point I want to make, and I see you got your hand up, but the last point I want to make along those lines is, and I've talked about this before, this is a relationship business. So I'm not a collection agency. I'm a small business like them if I have to. And one of the things I'll do in my emails, if it gets to that, is just remind them, I'm trying to make payroll this month. Could you please pay up? And that can sometimes be very effective. Just like remind them, I'm a small businessman too. I'm facing the same pressures you are. And I don't say this, but I mean, the implication is, I know why you haven't paid me, but now I need the money. And I find that pretty effective. And you had a question.
I do. I know you love Kenny. Do you use his billing system through Kenny, or are you looking at possibly doing that?
I haven't really looked at that. No, I'm using, I use QuickBooks. I'm actually going to build, I'm doing all the software. I'm going to build my own billing system because I want it more customized than what QuickBooks can offer me.
I think Kenny's like a one-off. Like you sign up online. It was for self-service, if I remember looking at it. It's a self-service.
You can also set it up
With your existing.
Can you?
Bill the
Yeah.
customers, and then once a month he sends you deposits the money that he's collected from all the customers over the month.
Yeah, maybe that might be a way to do it. If you, especially if you don't have a credit card account.
I think if I was starting out new maybe and signing up with him for the first time, or newish, I mean, that would make a lot of sense to go. Just, streamline it. But for us, by the time I got involved with Kenny, we had so many kind of legacy systems in place and so many accounts going.
Mm-hmm. And my people want me to show them books, so it makes it hard when I have all these. I mean, QuickBooks is so like all in one place,
I use QuickBooks Online for nonprofits, which is a special form of torture.
Because it's for nonprofits.
But it really, it has given me so much ability to look at everything year over year, and look at things in the same way that I was able to look at them when I was a department head at a newspaper, and I could see, I could track things, and even better than that. So, and we just also, from a nonprofit standpoint, started being able to include in QuickBooks the in-kind contributions that we get, like for instance the fact that San Antonio Library gives us 2 offices, and that's worth about $12,000. University of Texas San Antonio, we had 2 interns from them, and so we're recognizing that they were paid through work study funds, so we're recognizing that as in kind, and it makes me feel a little bit less like we're really emphasizing the nonprofit part of nonprofit.
All right. So what I do when I start running out of money, or when I start looking at my books, it's always the intent or the instincts to go look at your expenses. But there's only so much you can cut on expenses, especially when you're small. So the only thing that I really look at the first time is revenue. How do I increase revenue? And the only way I know how to increase revenue is to either sell harder or come out with some new product or new idea. And like right now we're facing this oil slump in Texas, so it really stinks because I was growing like crazy. I could walk around real cocky and say I'm like the biggest, baddest guy, but I can't do that now because oil went to $20 a barrel and everyone quit buying cars. you know? And now we have the presidential election and all the uncertainties surrounding that. So things are just swirling right now. And so I view this time as a time to steal some market share from radio stations and to come out with some new products, new ideas, and try to diversify off of just banner ads and email ads. So that's what I'm looking at that's what we're doing right now for the interim. We're looking at the revenue line and figuring out how do we increase revenues.
I could probably think of other stories to tell, but and maybe if you guys are willing to go along with this, maybe there are issues that people are having they want to raise, and we can give you any thoughts that we have. Anybody got any?
Well, before we joined Lion, one of the things that I've been trying to do, because I read it online, and some people have told me this, is you've got to find a really good ad salesman that'll relieve the pressure, because of course I'm trying to do it all. And yet since I've come here, I've heard from a lot of people in the same boat as I am, only 2 or 3 people who are doing this thing, that the best ad salesman is yourself, because you are the most passionate about the business. You know what they want. You know how to deliver this. What's been the experience with that, and how do I deal with this when I'm trying to juggle so many ads?
So I would say so when I first started. Now I had some ad sales background before I got involved in this, so it was not painful for me to go out and sell, and I just set sales targets and did it by the numbers and made sure I set quotas for myself and made sure I hit them. I got to make X number of calls a day. I got to set X number of appointments. I've got to go out on X number of appointments. And generally I found if I could get an appointment, 80% of the time I close the sale. And there's a concept, in sales of always getting the first yes. Once you start getting the yeses going, they just build up. So the first yes is making the appointment with you.
Have you hired a salesman?
I've had salespeople. I don't presently. So I'm trying to. That's a big thing. So early on, I built up all these relationships with all these small business owners by going out there, and I think that has long-term benefits.
I think it's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and
as the owner, you've got to be able to know who you're selling to. You got to have that relationship, because they're not buying San Angelo Live. They're buying a little bit of piece of you.
Right. Well, and you're going in and selling. Usually when you're coming in, they don't know you. They don't know your product. They're unsure about this internet thing. So you got to sell them the vision, and you got to sell them, and keep the product offering simple, so that there's just less of a barrier there. But in this kind of business, if you do it right, once you get most of these people, you're going to have long-term relationship with you, and you're going to become friends with them, and they're going to support you because they like what you're doing. That's the first order of business. But eventually, like for my business, I feel we're mature enough now, and I got so much going on, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to do a lot of things that I really need a sales rep. We're not going to grow without one.
No question about that.
You don't have it. So as a business owner really has to add to the sales rep.
Here's the model. Okay, you go out and build enough. It's all about the deck, right? When a salesperson comes online, unless he's an acquisition sales guy, you have acquisition sales, you have farming sales. Okay, what you want to do is you want to build a big enough deck of accounts that you can actually support someone with your current accounts. And you take that, let's say it's a deck of accounts that's 30,000, and you offer the guy 15%. Well, 15% of 30,000 is $4,500 a month. That's something you can live off of, even in Grand Rapids, where it's very expensive, right? So something like that, that's the model. You build up your deck of accounts. Now you can hire someone and you pay them straight commission. Don't pay any of this base stuff, and don't get sucked into that. You're giving them a deck of accounts. That is more valuable to the right person than any base plus commission. Does that make sense? I mean, But at the same time, unless you have someone who's extraordinary, who happens to show up on your doorstep like a lost puppy, who's an extraordinary salesperson, you're not going to find an independent salesperson who's going to have the wherewithal and the dedication and the ability to build up that deck of accounts to $30,000 before you can hand it off. Would you agree with me on that as the sales guy?
So, and then if you give that person a book of established relationships you've got, it's easy for you to continue to have someone take maintenance with those accounts. Because you're the one who started the relationship. And then you have the ability to develop more relationships on your own. Never wanting to completely forget what this other person is now supposed to be taking care of on your back.
And 30,000 is arbitrary and 15% is arbitrary. I'm not telling you that's what the standard is.
So just a thought along those lines, when you stop doing the sales. Now for me, and it may apply to others, since I'm out doing a lot of coverage and whatnot, I'm running into my advertisers at events, or I'm showing up in their businesses. I'm maintaining the relationship even if I'm not the one doing the sales anymore. But one of the mistakes I've observed newspaper publishers do in this day and age, and it just, when I first observed it, it baffled me. Because I don't know, when I started out in the industry, the publisher always showed up at Chamber of Commerce events and other community events. And I see publishers now that never leave the office. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of hurting the newspaper industry. They're losing those relationships. So as the owner, you've got to find, if you're no longer the one touching every single business every month, you've got to find other ways of mixing it up, being in the community, staying in touch with your core customers.
Just to go back to the old days in newspapers, when I was the business editor at the San Antonio Express News, I was encouraged to go to the Chamber of Commerce, except that then there were 17 chambers of commerce. There are 24 now because they've added an LGBT and something else. But I went to every blessed one of them.
Any other questions or issues to raise, problems to address?
One thing I will say is that on credit card billing, I have a retail account. If somebody walks in and wants to pay me, they're in. Then I have a website where they can pay.
Mhm.
I got my merchant account statement the other day, and they are nickel and diming me to death. Non-compliance fee and monthly fee and
Yeah.
on and on.
And an air miles fee or something. I mean,
Oh, my
rewards card fee.
Yeah,
It's
so-
ridiculous.
But a lot of those fees are negotiable, and it takes getting on the phone calls with companies, and you have to negotiate with them, and you have to jump through their hoops sometimes, but it can make a difference for somebody who's upwards of, $300 a month, which is a lot of money, all the time, and so I'm just saying that watch those fees on every credit card, it's silly that.
I use Evlon, and I'm not getting any of those fees. Evlon, EVLON, I think. EV.
Who is a good credit card processor? There's all these.
Wait, but you're paying a credit card processor.
Yeah. So
I mean, there's middlemen.
out of the $5,000 or $6,000 a month that I collect in credit cards, I think my fees are running about a total of less than $100 that they take out of my account every month.
It's worth it to get paid.
Yeah.
On the PayPal, I mean, we also face significant fees. When I
pay more
yeah.
for PayPal than I do for my credit card processor.
Scott's right though. It's worth it to get paid. I'd rather pay PayPal 50 cents or whatever for the transaction, or
True, it's just that sometimes you can reduce those fees.
yeah, that's an expense place where you can go.
And if you can get it wired straight to the bank, I mean, that does lose those fees. And we were able to get our bank to agree to let things come straight in, and that's just awesome. I mean, when something comes straight across that way, I just see that lack of deduction, and it makes me smile. Yes, you could add a lot to sales here.
Well, I think as far as the hard times thing goes, if things are going wrong with the salesperson, I have yet to see them turn back around. So it took my friend Sue, who's been selling with me for 6 years, to walk up and grab my hands one day and go, "Look at you, you're a mess. That guy is driving you crazy." And it was a sales rep, and he was very narcissistic. He was making me feel like everything was my fault when something didn't close. I mean, it was just, I was so busy with the growth, I wasn't seeing what that guy and what he was doing and the worry he was causing me and me feeling like things were my fault. That was really dragging the whole company down. And so try to, get your head out of the weeds and be able to let somebody go when it's time. And don't wait too long. I mean,
That's what you do get protected. You protect yourself somewhat more by making sure it's a commission-only compensation plan, because they're sucking off of some sort of base, and then they're not fully vested.
well, and that was part of the problem with this guy was he was full commission, and all he could do was sit around and make spreadsheets about how much money he was going to get the next month, and he wasn't out selling. I mean, it was like, so you had to recognize those things really fairly quickly. I mean, he didn't last 60 days. I mean, I did, but he'd driven me nuts in 60 days. And also to go back to nobody sells it like you do. I said that in the session before this one. It's true, but your company can't grow if you're the only one selling. And so my answer to that is spend a lot of time with them the first 30 days, make sure they really know all your analytics, all the sales points, and they have your words. And the only way they're going to get that is to be on appointments with you. And my sales rep, again, 6 years, she still hears me say things that she didn't know because things are changing and growing, and I'm the one who's in the office and looking at the analytics and all of that. So nobody really is ever going to know what you know, but they learn from you every appointment that you go on with them. So even after they're trained, and even if they're doing well, you should go on at least one appointment with them every week if you can, at least.
And it helps the salesperson because they're going to be more vested if they see the passion coming from it. Then they're going to be passionate about the product. And they're going to
Right.
psychologically buy into it.
And speaking of being passionate about the product, all of our sales reps, with the exception of the one I just hired who's killing it anyway, they were all readers first.
That's what I was going to say. Where
They are, yes, and I found
Sales
my,
reps are readers?
yes.
part of the audience.
Wow.
I put on Facebook, I'm looking for a sales rep. It can be a part-time mom. You can work 6 hours a day.
Well, who did
Two
you-
best sales reps I've had.
Who did you hire?
Who did I hire?
My mom? Who did you hire?
This is, it's not a profile in a negative way, but it's a profile in a good way. They were, mid-40s, had previous sales experience, had worked for AT&T, Siemens. They had professional training experience. And
They were good with consulting.
but they'd been at-home moms for like 5 or 6 years. But these women are not just at-home moms a lot of the time. They're running fundraisers. They're running the PTO. I mean, look for a PTO president or a booster club president who is like, dang, I'd really like to start getting paid for this. Oh yeah, my kid's going to college in 2 years. That's been the most motivated sales rep I had. But I did have a young woman, great sales experience, and I died to lose her this past June. But I've hired on LinkedIn lately, and that's been a good one for me.
The one you lost, the young salesperson, did you lose her because she went on to something else, or?
Yeah, her family was in the bedding business. Like her family was a wealthy manufacturing family, and they had sold the company. And so she left there. She came on with me for 15 months, was doing very well. She had really hit her stride for like the last 6 months and was just doing great. She left me with a really nice book of business. But somebody in the bedding industry asked her to come back in, and she was back where she was familiar, and they were also bringing her dad into the company, and it was just a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get to work with her dad. So she really was sad to leave, and I mean, I miss her all the time. But I was trying to think if there's anything else sales-wise.
I think
And
activity. If you
Level of
start
activity,
seeing-
yeah.
If you start seeing no activity, and things are all kind of boring and dry, and it pisses you off, and you walk in your office and you see someone's car there, that was my deal. If I see someone's car and it makes me mad, I fire them. But it takes me a while because I'm a nice guy. But there's got to be activity, and you got to you have to encourage that activity to continue. And sometimes when you say, she's saying, well, you can't grow your business if you're out selling. Sometimes it takes you to go out there and close a small deal, or to line up help one of your people line up 3 appointments, so you can increase the amount of activity and intensity. Because the activity right there is what, I don't know, it's kind of like, you got to stir the water to get anything out of it. So, anything else?
Any questions?
How much more time do you have, Kelly?
I've got 3:48 and it's, yeah, we've got about 6 more minutes.
6 minutes.
So, I hate to be really short, but feel like you use it, bring it on. What, do you ever get like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to be a fireman?
Too damn old.
You know,
You know what, I've been there days and you just go, oh my gosh, I just don't know that I can do this anymore. Because
I went in on this one.
I want to be a waitress, go, plant
So,
flowers.
I've gone through my career. If you look at my resume, I've stayed at jobs no longer than 5 years in my life, because newspapers did that for me and moved me from city to city in great opportunities. And I've done this since June of 2009. So this is the longest I've been in a job in my life. And yeah, there are still times when, but it's 2:00 in the morning when I'm worried about making payroll. That I go.
That's when you say, why am I doing this? At 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I would say payroll's the bane of my existence.
Yeah, and I also think that I look at people through a different lens now, because there are people that I can talk to in this organization and elsewhere who are small business people who I can say, yeah, I'm still making payroll. And there are people who have never had to make payroll, and they are in like some fantasy land out there.
Yeah. My unique qualification for if I had been sitting on this panel, which I just
should have been.
I just crashed, is I had a really hard thing happen to me in 2015, and I found out that I had a dishonest employee who had been stealing money from me for 2 years, and I wanted to quit so bad. And what kept me going was the 10 people who worked for me. And they were very supportive. They rallied around me. They couldn't pay off the debt she left me, and they couldn't make me feel less stupid and less ashamed, and just not trusting anybody anymore. But I wanted to quit. But I don't know. I think that's the really good thing about having employees, not the payroll week all the time, but not every other Friday. But
Were you doing it for them? Were you keeping going?
I probably would have stopped if I didn't have employees at that moment, because it was really hard.
I remember you telling me last year, the one thing I know you mentioned to this point was, go get the mail yourself, and not have somebody else.
Get the mail yourself. Check the bank. I check the bank balance every day now. Not that she was stealing out of my account; she was stealing the checks out of the post office box. But I don't get as close to. I was really close to her. I did Bible study with her every day. That's not ever going to happen again. And oh yeah, that's a really bad, embarrassing part. But I do back. If you hire somebody, whatever they're doing, whether they're touching your money or not, do a background check, because you still have checks in the building. They still probably know where they are. And you have a credit card laying around at some point that they could take. So I think and I highly suggest using a payroll service. I use ADP. It's been very helpful. Nobody touches it but me. And it's a pain with 30 employees at this point to do payroll. But yeah, but nobody touches payroll but me now. I want to know exactly what's going on. I look at my bank every day. I have a little savings account over here now. Accrued money that for somebody who pays up front for something, I put aside so that I know I have the money to pay the freelancer to hold out on that deal or fill that promise. So I just think that, but I'm telling you, that was March of 2015. Life is completely different now, and I'm glad I kept going. And I really, what was it Dylan said last night? Like, we want to have a lion in every city, and we want to change the world. I mean, I feel like I have the chance to change the world. And when Jay said yesterday, I'm doing what I was meant to do, I never thought this is what I would be doing. It never even occurred to me. I never thought I would want to be an employer. I love being an employer. I love having a team that's highly functioning. I don't like paying them, but
Can I ask you a question about,
But-
when this calamity happened to you last year, how many employees do you have?
I had, I think I had 8.
So you had 8 employees, you had this giant calamity, and now you have 30. Questions?
So can I add to that? One of the real reason that I was added to this panel at the last minute is something that I can't talk a whole lot about because it's a lawsuit and it's in litigation and it was
Oh, and my
filed
person pleading
and it was
guilty.
filed for and it was filed by the former chair of my board of directors. And
Your husband?
no, he's just the number one volunteer. And it has made me wonder, whether I should continue. But the calls and stuff that we got from people, including the nuns of the Daughters of St. Vincent de Paul that know what the documentary that we produced on women and children refugees from Central America, and they called and said, "You can't go away. We can't lose you." And that's what makes me stay.
So, to the question, I've had nothing as calamitous as that, but I would say anytime I make a major mistake in a story and I get really depressed about it, or I lose an advertiser that I really hate to lose, or it could just be because somehow my brain clicks over into this negative track. I
Get on Facebook.
I get on Facebook. I read some of the comments people say about me on Facebook. I'll be like, why the hell am I doing this? But there's a couple things. One is I think about some of my previous employment and the politics involved. I'm like, I don't want to go do that again. And I think about, and then also, that we have so many great people in the community, readers and community members, whatever, that are so supportive of us. And so, like, when somebody's being really nasty to me, I remind myself, you don't even represent 1/10% of the people that read the Batavian. So your opinion really shouldn't matter to me. And and then just that overall general support and how much they're supported, and the other thing is that to be at it, 140 ads consistently, hit 10,000 at least readers every day after all this time, the staying power is confidence building. And so it helps get past those negative thoughts. The other thing I wanted to add is it just struck me a week or two ago. I've been doing the Batavian longer than I ever worked any place in my life. And
You're stuck.
yeah. So, and we'll probably we haven't hit it yet, but the house we're in will probably wind up being the place we've lived the longest since we were married. So,
Anyway, 8 minutes are up. Any other things? Closing remarks? Lewd comments?